I entered into a contract with the icy female CEO. I would supply my top-tier genetics, and she would pay me 5 million yuan in return. The moment the child reached 2 years old, I was supposed to pack up and get out of her life. Who could have guessed I possessed such incredible fertility? A single hit resulted in twins. During the utter chaos outside the delivery room, I seized the perfect opportunity amidst the panic and snatched up the weaker crying younger twin before making a clean getaway. For 6 whole years, I raised chickens and grew vegetables out in the countryside, nurturing my son into a healthy, glowing, and chubby little boy, until one day when I drove my son into town on a tricycle to sell our produce. A sleek Maybach suddenly pulled up and stopped right in front of us. A little boy sharply dressed in a tiny suit stepped out of the vehicle, looking like an absolute spitting image of my own son. My son, Jiang Xiaoman, called out in a voice that sounded completely breathless from shock, yet resounded with booming vigor. All the surrounding street vendors selling vegetables, every single uncle and aunt hawking their greens, instantly locked their eyes directly on me. I was utterly finished, completely cooked. An intense buzzing sensation exploded inside my head, and the head of cabbage in my hand, meant for a customer, was almost dropped right onto the ground. Cold sweat began pouring down my forehead, as I never would have dreamed in a million years. That 6 peaceful years of rustic countryside life would come to a screeching halt in such a bizarre manner today, officially reaching its sudden end. Stepping out from the opposing Maybach, dressed in a tailored mini-suit, adorned with a neat little bow tie, was a miniature, pint-sized version of a domineering CEO. He was just as stunned as my own son, yet carried a sharper sense of scrutiny and deep curiosity, as his eyes locked onto the two of us. Just then, the car door behind him swung open once more, and a long, slender leg wrapped in black silk stockings stepped out first, revealing the very woman whose image was forever etched into my DNA. The icy face of Qin Bing that could startle me awake from my dreams. Even 6 years later, she still sported that same frosty, expressionless face, with a piercing glare sharp enough to freeze a man to death. The only real difference now was that on her usually impassive, ice-cold face, a visible crack of shock finally surfaced. As her intense gaze landed on us, reality slapped me right in the face as I looked at my son, just like Xiaoman, covered in specks of mud, yet bearing that exact same face as mine. And right after that, my gaze slowly drifted back to the little boy in the tailor-made suit. 2 completely identical boys, one wearing a pair of dirt-stained, cheap jeans, looking just like a miniature version of me, while the other was dressed in haute couture like a little prince. The air around us instantly froze. I felt like my heart was hammering at 180 beats per minute. Dad, speak to me. Do you have another family hidden away in the city? Are you really doing this to me and Wang Dawa back at the village entrance? You little brat. What did I ever have anything to do with Wang Dawa? That's the village chief's dog. I immediately slapped my hand over Jiang Xiaoman's mouth, forcing out a smile that looked far worse than crying. Children say the darndest things. Just pure childish nonsense. Qin Bing completely ignored my weak excuse. His eyes were like 2 razor-sharp scalpels, scrutinizing me and Jiang Xiaoman inch by inch. The 2 hulking bodyguards in black behind him had already silently moved into position, advancing directly toward us. All right, only one single thought flashed through my mind. I slammed my foot down on the tricycle's accelerator. This faithful old ride that had stuck with me for 6 long years let out a defiant, roaring screech, carrying me along with an entire truckload of fresh vegetables, and bolted forward like crazy. Catch him! Qin Bing's ice-cold order echoed from right behind us. Back in my prime, they used to call me the god of mountain drifting. I twisted the throttle all the way to the absolute limit. The electric tricycle wove through the cramped alleyways of the vegetable market, weaving back and forth at breakneck speed, knocking over 2 fruit stalls along the way. Smashed tomatoes flew everywhere, accompanied by the furious curses of the local vendors, blending into the chaotic sound of the bodyguards giving chase. Dad, you look so freaking cool. It's just like we're starring in an action movie. Jiang Xiaoman screamed with wild excitement in my arms. Cool my ass. We're literally running for our lives. After all, a mere tricycle stood no chance against a fleet of luxury cars. Just as we broke free from the crowded vegetable market, a menacing black Land Rover slammed to a halt right in front of us, completely blocking our only path of escape. Two hulking bodyguards, flanking me on the left and right, yanked me out of the vehicle as easily as plucking a helpless chicken. Qin Bing, clicking her high heels against the pavement, approached me step by deliberate step, until she finally uttered my name. Her voice wasn't even loud, yet sent a violent shiver running down my spine. Long time no see, hasn't it? I forced myself to lift my head with extreme difficulty, plastering on a goofy, nervous grin. What a crazy coincidence. President Qin, are you out here doing some grocery shopping too? Qin Bing's lips twitched slightly in annoyance, choosing not to answer my pathetic attempt at small talk. Instead, she slowly crouched down, gazing directly at Jiang Xiaoman, who was being held firmly by the bodyguards, extending her hand as if wanting to tenderly touch his face. Jiang Xiaoman's neck instinctively recoiled, glaring back at her with intense vigilance. Qin Bing's hand froze mid-air, trembling slightly. She took a long, deep breath to steady herself. 6 years ago, you gave birth to twins, didn't you? Qin Bing's tone was eerily calm. Yet beneath that placid surface raged an active volcano on the verge of exploding. I could feel the terrifying force of the bodyguard pressing down on my shoulders, the grip tightening its crushing strength by another notch. Admitting the truth meant instant death, but refusing to confess meant getting beaten to death for playing dumb. My eyes darted around frantically, desperate for a way out. I immediately put on a masterclass performance of utter shock and complete innocence. Twins. President Qin, what on earth are you talking about? I genuinely have no idea what you mean. I dramatically gestured toward Jiang Xiaoman. Face dripping with absolute sincerity, this kid is actually my nephew. My poor brother and sister-in-law tragically passed away in a horrific car crash. And I've been busting but working nonstop just to raise him all by myself. It hasn't been easy at all, you know? I even squeezed out a couple of fake tears for dramatic effect. Just look at how much this little guy resembles me. They always say nephews take after their aunts, or take after their uncles. Before I could even finish my grand sob story, Jiang Xiaoman threw a total fit, screaming, "Dad, what kind of absolute garbage are you spewing right now? When on earth did you ever have a brother? My grandparents passed away long before I was even born. I was completely ruined by this stupid son of mine. I wished I could dig a hole and bury myself alive right then and there. This is Qin Zhao's official birth certificate, along with the full hospital records from 6 years ago." Her piercing gaze remained locked firmly on me as she laid out the official medical records, which clearly showed that 6 years ago at Bihao Maternity Hospital, a newborn vanished without a trace just 3 hours after birth. I started sweating bullets and felt utterly terrified. Damn my careless, sloppy rush back then. I was so hopelessly busy fleeing for my life that I completely forgot to destroy the paper trail. It's just a crazy coincidence. It absolutely has to be a coincidence. Qin Bing refused to waste another breath engaging in pointless chatter with me, barking a direct order to her bodyguards to pack us into the vehicle. We're heading straight back to Hentang Villa, and contact Attorney Zhang immediately. I demand an emergency paternity test conducted right this instant. Understood, President Qin. Escorted like a high-risk criminal, I was forcefully shoved into the back of the Land Rover flanked by 2 imposing bodyguards, with Jiang Xiaoman tossed and right alongside me. Yet this fearless little brat wasn't frightened in the slightest. Instead, he began curiously poking and prodding the plush leather seats, shouting, "Dad, this ride is a whole lot more comfortable than your rusty old tricycle. Although it's definitely nowhere near as fast as yours. And it keeps getting stuck in traffic." The entire journey was dead silent and suffocating. The motorcade drove straight toward an exclusive, secluded estate on the outskirts of the city. The undisputed ultra-luxurious haven for the top 1%. Genting Villa. Just hearing the name alone was enough to tell you how absurdly expensive it was. The luxury SUV ground to a halt before a grand mansion that resembled an ancient royal castle. And Jiang Xiaoman and I were forcefully escorted into the main living room. The living room was so insanely massive you could literally host a full-blown track meet in it. The dazzling crystal chandeliers hanging from the high ceiling almost blinded me. The moment we stepped inside, Jiang Xiaoman threw caution to the wind, doing a series of chaotic somersaults across the imported carpet. Qin Bing took her seat atop the main leather sofa like an absolute queen, while the little boy named Qin Zhao sat silently by her side like a perfect angel, gently clutching a tablet computer in his hands, his eyes occasionally drifting over to sneak a peek. Meanwhile, Jiang Xiaoman was rolling around on the floor barking like a wild dog. The stark contrast between these two was literally a what you ordered versus what you got nightmare. Jiangji. The Ice Queen finally broke her silence, stating coldly, "I'll grant you one final chance. Return the $5 million you took from me back then. Leave the child behind where he belongs, and you may walk out of here unharmed." My heart instantly skipped a beat at the mention of the money. With that $5 million, I built a rural estate, bought farmland, and raised livestock. Not to mention funding 6 years of dynamic lifestyle expenses for me and Jiang Xiaoman. That money had practically been drained down to the absolute last cent. More importantly, demanding that I surrender Jiang Xiaoman. I turned my head to look at the little menace currently flailing on the rug, calling him an ungrateful little brat. Yet I spent 6 painstaking years, wiping his tears and changing his diapers just to raise him into a healthy boy. I took a deep, steadying breath, looking straight into Qin Bing's cold eyes for the very first time. I'll find a way to pay back every single cent of that money. But Xiaoman is my son, your son too. Qin Bing sneered, as if she had just heard the absolute joke of the century. Have you forgotten the contract we signed? You were nothing more than a simple genetic donor. Well, that contract never specified what happens if I had twins. I puffed out my chest and snapped right back at her. Besides, that child was so frail and sickly back then. The doctor said he might not even survive the night. I was the one who brought him back to the countryside, nourishing him back to health with home-brewed rice soup and old folk remedies. Every single word was the absolute truth. Jiang Xiaoman was born prematurely, scrawny, weak, and crying like a helpless little kitten. Part of why I snuck him away was for the money. But the other half was because I feared his cold-hearted mother would genuinely abandon him to die. Qin Bing's icy composure cracked slightly, though her expression hardened again just as quickly. I don't care about your excuses. I only judge by the final results. And the result is that you embezzle my money and stole my biological son on our very first day under house arrest in this massive mansion. I finally understood the true meaning behind the dull, extravagant lives of the filthy rich. Qin Bing assigned me and Jiang Xiaoman a guest room that was literally larger than my entire farmhouse back in the country. It came complete with an ensuite bathroom, a walk-in closet, and a private terrace that overlooked an entire sprawling golf course. Jiang Xiaoman went completely wild with excitement. He bounced relentlessly up and down on the 6-foot-wide king bed, treating the outrageously expensive silk duvet like his personal trampoline. "Dad, are we seriously going to live here from now on? This place is way bigger than Uncle Wong's pigsty. Could this stupid kid's comparisons get any more uncultured?" Unlike him, I couldn't afford to be optimistic in the slightest. I quietly tiptoed over and tried to open the door. "Hold it right there." 2 towering bodyguards in black stood guard at the doorway, like intimidating gatekeepers, while the windows were fitted with heavy security locks, opening only wide enough to let in a tiny sliver of air. She really was locking me up like a high-security prisoner. When lunchtime finally rolled around, a maid knocked politely on the door, asking us to head down to the dining room. The massive banquet table was packed with an unbelievable array of exquisite dishes. Western cuisine, traditional Chinese delicacies, and premium Japanese sushi. Qin Bing sat proudly at the head of the long table, while Qin Zhao sat silently to her left, quietly and gracefully cutting his steak with a silver knife and fork. Jiang Xiaoman and I were seated directly across from them. Jiang Xiaoman had never witnessed such insane luxury in his entire life. He instantly grabbed a massive Australian lobster with his bare hands and was just about to shove the whole thing into his mouth. Xiaoman, spit that out right now. I quickly intercepted him, stopping him from ripping into it like a wild animal. What do you think you're doing? As I scolded him, I expertly picked up the seafood utensils with practiced ease, deftly shelling the succulent lobster meat for him, and gently placing it onto his plate. Thanks, Dad. Jiang Xiaoman flashed a sweet, beaming smile. He picked up his fork and stabbed a juicy piece of lobster, but didn't eat it himself. Instead, he held it up right in front of my face. Dad, you take the first bite. A surge of warmth instantly flooded my heart. I opened my mouth and happily ate the piece of lobster. Directly across from us, Qin Bing's hands holding her knife and fork froze midair. She silently watched the tender interaction between father and son, her gaze filled with a swirling vortex of complex emotions. Even Qin Zhao, sitting beside her, stopped eating altogether, staring at the two of us in absolute silence. Qin Bing cleared her throat coldly, breaking the heavy silence in the room. Jiang Xiaoman, she commanded in a stern tone that left zero room for argument. Starting from today, you're going to learn proper etiquette and table manners. No making loud, obnoxious noises while eating. Absolutely no grabbing food with your bare hands. And you will learn how to use a knife and fork properly. Jiang Xiaoman, his cheeks stuffed full of lobster, mumbled incoherently with his mouth full. What the heck are manners? Do I taste good? Qin Bing's forehead instantly creased into deep frown lines. Qin Zhao, show him how it's done. Qin Zhao dutifully set down his own cutlery, picked up a fresh pair of silver utensils, and handed them over to Jiang Xiaoman. Whispering softly, you have to hold them like this. Jiang Xiaoman clumsily tried to copy his movements. Clang! The heavy metal fork instantly slipped from his hand and crashed to the floor. He leaned down to pick it back up, only to violently smack his head against the heavy table leg. Ouch! The sudden loud crash echoed across the entire dining room, leaving the surrounding maids completely horrified, while Qin Bing's face grew darker and darker with every passing second. Yet inside, I couldn't help but feel a tiny bit smug. That's what you get for looking down on country folks. My son, single-handedly, might actually end up demolishing your entire precious castle. We finally managed to survive that chaotic meal. Qin Bing summoned Qin Zhao over to her side, handing him a pile of absurdly expensive luxury toys. Zhao, take your brother to the toy room to play. Then, she cast an icy, condescending glare at Jiang Xiaoman. Those are all yours now. You can play with whichever ones you like. This was nothing short of a blatant, sugar-coated bribe. You scoffed internally ahead petty tactics, thinking you can corrupt my pure, innocent son with mere pocket change. Not a chance. Meanwhile, the two identical little boys were standing side by side for the very first time. Qin Zhao clutched a limited edition transformer in his hands, looking completely overwhelmed and lost. Jiang Xiaoman excitedly circled around him like a curious puppy, reaching out his hands to inspect every inch of his fancy clothes. Whoa, what kind of fancy fabric is your suit made of? It feels way softer than my dad's old sweatshirt. Qin Zhao's face instantly flushed bright red at the sudden contact, muttering softly, this is tailor-made pure silk. Forget that, come on. I'm going to take you somewhere super fun. I hurriedly rushed after them, watching Jiang Xiaoman drag Qin Zhao by the wrist, sprinting all the way toward a massive tree in the villa's backyard. Check this out. Jiang Xiaoman aggressively rolled up his sleeves, spitting on his palms for extra grip, and scampered up the tree trunks in 3 quick, effortless bounds. He perched himself firmly atop a thick wooden branch, waving frantically at the utterly flabbergasted Qin Zhao down below. Climb on up. The view up here is absolutely amazing. Qin Zhao tilted his head up, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of deep longing and intense fear. Yvette, I've never climbed a tree before. What's there to be scared of? I'll teach you step by step. Jiang Xiaoman assumed the role of an expert little teacher. Grab onto this branch right here, then step your foot right over there. Yeah, just like that. Driven by Jiang Xiaoman's loud, passionate encouragement, Qin Zhao actually began clumsily scrambling his way up the tree, leaning against the trunk from below and witnessing this breathtaking moment. My heart was filled with an indescribable rush of mixed emotions. Just at that precise moment, Qin Bing's icy voice suddenly resonated from right behind me. So this is what you call your superior parenting style? What kind of future can a life like this possibly offer him? I turned around to see her standing there, having approached silently at some unknown moment. A heavy streak of cold mockery written all over her face, teaching him to raid bird nests or hunt in the mountains. I merely chuckled softly, pointing upward toward that tiny, struggling figure, clumsily scrambling up the tree trunk. President Qin, I may not be able to leave him a billion-dollar empire, but I can give him a carefree, genuine childhood. Don't you think your own son looks truly happy right now? Qin Bing's gaze followed my finger toward the branches, where Qin Zhao, with Jiang Xiaoman's frantic assistance, had finally managed to haul himself onto a sturdy lower branch, clinging to the trunk in absolute terror, yet displaying a radiant, thrilled look on his face that she had never once seen before. The two boys sat side by side high up on the branch, Jiang Xiaoman animatedly pointing off into the distance, spitting enthusiastically as he bragged about how he used to reign supreme over the entire village. Qin Bing's eyes flickered with a sudden flurry of mixed emotions, falling completely silent as time seemed to freeze, until disaster abruptly struck. The branch holding Qin Zhao up seemed utterly unable to bear their combined weight. Letting out a sharp, terrifying crack, he unleashed a blood-curdling shriek as his tiny body lost balance, plunging headfirst off the tree. Zhao Zhao! Qin Bing screamed out in sheer horror, her face instantly draining of all color. My heart flew straight up into my throat. How on earth was this luxury tree so damn weak? In that split second before total catastrophe, Jiang Xiaoman, sitting right beside him, reacted with lightning speed. He lunged forward like a wild little monkey, tackling Qin Zhao firmly around the waist with zero hesitation. Hold on to me tightly. Jiang Xiaoman summoned every ounce of his strength, forcibly yanking Qin Zhao back, just as he was about to fall to his doom. However, due to the sheer momentum of the pull, both children went tumbling off the branch together. Thankfully, they weren't too high off the ground, landing heavily right onto the plush, thick lawn below, and rolling several times across the grass. Qin Bing and I dashed over simultaneously, screaming, "Zhao Zhao, are you hurt? Talk to me." Qin Bing frantically scooped Qin Zhao up into her arms, panicking as she inspected him top to bottom for injuries. Her eyes were rimmed completely red with sheer terror. "Xiaoman," I rushed over and quickly pulled my son up from the grass. "My butt is totally crushed, Dad." Yet despite his own pain, he immediately checked on Qin Zhao first, asking with genuine concern, "Hey, little suit guy, are you all right?" Qin Zhao was still visibly shaken, silently shaking his head, before turning to Jiang Xiaoman and softly muttering, "Thank you." This was the very first time he had taken the initiative to speak to Jiang Xiaoman. After completing her thorough inspection, Qin Bing realized that Qin Zhao had only suffered a minor scrape on his elbow, finally letting out a sigh of deep relief. However, she immediately redirected all her burning fury straight toward me. "Jiangji, is this what you arrogantly call a happy childhood?" Encouraging him to drag my precious son into life-threatening danger. "If anything terrible had happened to Zhao Zhao today, I would have ensured you rotted in prison for the absolute rest of your life." Unbelievable. This woman was being totally unreasonable. Before I even had a chance to argue back, Jiang Xiaoman stepped up and barked, "This has nothing to do with my dad. I was the one who dragged him up that tree. Real men are supposed to be tough. What's the big deal about taking a tiny fall anyway? I fall out of trees almost every single day back home." He stood directly in front of me, puffing out his chest, like a fierce little rooster desperately protecting an old hen. "Besides, I just saved his life. You should actually be thanking me right now." Qin Bing was completely stunned into silence by his sudden outburst, staring in utter disbelief at this fiery boy standing before her, who possessed the exact same face as her own son, yet acted like an absolute wild little street gangster. She found herself totally speechless for a moment. Mom, please don't blame him. Qin Zhao interjected softly. I was the one who genuinely wanted to climb the tree. Qin Bing's face flushed through shades of furious blue and pale white. This was likely the very first time in her life that she had been simultaneously betrayed by both of her sons. In the end, she merely let out a harsh, freezing cold snort, glares at Qin Zhao, and leaves behind a sharp warning. Just you wait. She turned around and stormed back into the mansion without looking back. I crouched down and affectionately patted Jiang Xiaoman's head. Good boy. That was super manly of you back there. Of course it was. After all, I'm my father's son. Although on the surface, it seemed like I was completely at a disadvantage during this crazy ordeal. Deep down, I knew the truth. Within the hearts of both these young boys, a powerful seed had just been quietly planted. Later that night, Qin Bing attempted to salvage her pride using a massive financial blitz offensive, ordering her maids to fill the entire bedroom with luxury toys and haul them straight into Jiang Xiaoman's guest room. High-end remote-controlled racing cars, elaborate giant Lego castles, and rare limited edition figurines were piled up high like a mountain. All of these belong to you now, Qin Bing declared as she stood at the doorway, her expression as cold and distant as ever. As long as you behave yourself, there will be plenty more where that came from. Here it comes, here it comes. The relentless bribery tactics of capitalist wealth. I stared at Jiang Xiaoman with utter anxiety, nervously holding my breath. I watched my son rummage through that mountain of toys for a long time, before finally pulling out the absolute cheapest plastic water gun in the pile, turning to look at me eagerly and asking, Dad, can I play with this one? I gave him a reassuring nod. He was instantly thrilled beyond belief with that cheap water pistol, pew-pewing enthusiastically toward the high ceiling for a few minutes, before carelessly tossing it aside. He crawled over to cling on to me, begging, Dad, tell me a bedtime story. Tell me the one about how you single-handedly fought off that wild boar in the village. When on earth did I ever beat up a wild boar? I was clearly the one who got chased through 3 whole miles of forest by that beast. I cleared my throat dramatically, exaggerating wildly as I spun together a grand, nonsensical, heroic tale. Jiang Xiaoman listened with absolute delight, before quickly drifting off to sleep right in my arms. I gently cradled him, laying him down softly onto the soft mattress. When I turned around, I was shocked to find Qin Bing still standing by the doorway, having not left her spot for even a second. Her gaze drifted away from those discarded, extravagantly expensive luxury toys, and landed quietly on my son, who was sound asleep in my arms. Her eyes filled with a storm of complex emotions I couldn't quite fathom. I quietly tiptoed right up to her, whispering under my breath, Did you see that, President Qin? There are some precious things in this world that money simply can't buy. I deliberately puffed out my chest with pride, hoping to gain a little bit of leverage and dignity in front of her. Things like a father's unconditional love. Qin Bing remained completely silent for a painfully long time. So long, in fact, that I genuinely feared she was about to order her bodyguards to toss me out the window. The DNA samples for the paternity test will be dispatched tomorrow, and the final lab results will be ready shortly. You had better pray to God that he isn't actually my son. She abruptly turned around and walked away, staring at her solitary, lonely silhouette. That little surge of pride in my chest vanished in an instant. This woman didn't actually seem all that insufferable after all, though that thought barely lasted for 3 seconds, because it suddenly hit me. Jiang Xiaoman was 100 her biological son. The second those paternity test results were finalized, my doom would be officially sealed. No way. I can't just sit here like a sitting duck. First thing the next morning, the family doctor arrived at the estate fully equipped. Jiang Xiaoman, myself, and Qin Zhao. The 3 of us sat shoulder to shoulder on the sofa, waiting to have our blood drawn. Qin Zhao was clearly used to this medical routine, extending his arm without a single trace of emotion. Jiang Xiaoman, on the other hand, was doing this for the very first time. His face turned completely pale with pure terror. He clung onto my neck for dear life, whimpering, Dad, I don't want an injection. You absolute brat. Acting like a needle is going to kill you. You've gotten more vaccine shots than anyone else back home. Don't be scared, I gently reassured him. It doesn't hurt at all. It just feels like a tiny mosquito bite. For real, I promise. While I was busy comforting him, my brain was frantically spinning at full speed. I had to tamper with those blood samples somehow. My laser-focused gaze landed right on the collection tray resting on the table. The doctor drew Qin Zhao's blood first, carefully labeling the tube with Qin Zhao's name. Then came Jiang Xiaoman's turn. The little guy unleashed an earth-shattering wail, thrashing around wildly in my arms. No, I don't want to. The doctor and two surrounding maids scrambled to hold him down, creating absolute chaotic mayhem in the room. This was my golden opportunity, taking advantage of everyone's hyperfixation on the screaming Jiang Xiaoman. I subtly extended my hand, digging my fingernails brutally hard into my own forearm. Damn, that hurt like hell. The exact split second the doctor inserted the needle into Jiang Xiaoman, I pretended to lean in and soothe him, slipping my bleeding arm directly under his elbow. A single drop of my own blood quietly dripped straight into the vial meant for Jiang Xiaoman's sample collection. By the time it was all done, I was panting heavily, practically gasping for air. As long as the test proves Jiang Xiaoman isn't genetically tied to Qin Bing alone, or if the sample gets completely contaminated, she won't have any legal leverage to keep me trapped here. I'm an absolute evil genius. However, right after drawing the blood samples, the doctor proceeded to take swab samples from the three of us, collecting oral mucosal swabs from each of us individually, explaining, "This acts as a double insurance measure." My heart instantly dropped right back into my stomach, staring at those meticulously sealed sample test tubes. I had a terrifying gut feeling that those weren't just simple DNA swabs. They were my literal death warrant. That afternoon, Qin Bing had to head to her corporate headquarters for an emergency meeting. Right before stepping out the door, she specifically summoned Jiang Xiaoman and me to stand before her. Qin Zhao's private piano instructor is arriving for his lesson today. Jiang Xiaoman, you had better behave yourself, and do not dare disturb them under any circumstances. She flashed me a sharp, cold warning glare. If you can't manage to keep him under control, I'll happily step in and discipline him for you. Threatening a father like that is downright terrifying. Shortly after Qin Bing departed, a middle-aged man dressed in a sharp tuxedo, sporting a slicked-back comb-over over his balding head, stranded casually into the villa. He was none other than Qin Zhao's elite piano instructor, supposedly an internationally renowned grand maestro. The maestro seated himself majestically in the sprawling living room, positioning himself right at the grand piano. That thing looked like it cost an absolute fortune. Qin Zhao obediently took his seat right beside him. Soon enough, a crisp, melodious piano tune echoed through the room. Jiang Xiaoman crept closer out of intense curiosity, leaning against the side of the piano with wide, sparkling eyes, exclaiming, "Whoa, this giant wooden box can actually sing all by itself." The maestro instantly knit his brows in deep annoyance, yet maintained his arrogant posture, completely ignoring the boy. A few moments later, the instructor began harshly criticizing Qin Zhao's finger placement. "Your hand position is totally wrong. This segment requires explosive passion and fire, not this limp, weak wrist slop you're playing. How many times do I have to repeat myself? Are you a complete pig? How can you fail to memorize such a basic sheet music score?" The maestro's temperament grew progressively more toxic and abusive, his yelling echoing louder and louder throughout the mansion. Qin Zhao kept his head buried low in utter shame, his delicate little face completely flushed red. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he didn't even dare to let them fall. Watching this made my blood boil with absolute rage. What kind of trashy, pathetic excuse for a master is this? Is he actually teaching a student or berating his own helpless grandkid? Jiang Xiaoman couldn't stand watching it for another second. He suddenly stormed right over to the grand piano, slamming his fist onto the keys and releasing a deafening, chaotic noise. Everyone in the room was completely paralyzed with shock. "You're not allowed to yell at him like that." Jiang Xiaoman pointed his finger straight at the arrogant piano maestro, exuding an aura that was absurdly tough and fearless. The maestro trembled with pure, unadulterated rage, pointing his shaking finger right at me. Is this the feral, uncultured child you raised? I stepped forward unhurriedly, pulling Jiang Xiaoman safely behind my back. You're masterly, aren't you? My son's delivery might have been a bit rude, but every single word he said was dead accurate. I cast a gentle glance down at Qin Zhao. Children are meant to be patiently guided and taught, not verbally abused like dirt. This trashy teaching style of yours, aside from completely shattering a child's self-confidence, what actual purpose does it serve? What on earth could an uneducated brute like you possibly know about real art? The maestro glared down at me with absolute contempt. You clueless hillbilly. Have you ever even heard of Chopin in your miserable life? I let out a smug chuckle. Chopin? Sure, maybe I don't know much about him. But I do know one fundamental truth. No matter how legendary or highbrow music is, it's meant to bring joy to people. Any art that only inflicts misery and suffering isn't worth a single cent. With that, I boldly strutted right up to the grand piano. Rolling on my sleeves aggressively, I snorted, isn't it just pressing a few keys? I can play this damn thing too. Under the utterly flabbergasted gazes of everyone present, I casually planted myself onto the plush piano bench, taking a deep, dramatic breath. My mind flashed back to my college days when I slaved away learning a tune, just to hit on cute girls. My fingers slammed onto the ivory keys, exploding into an insanely familiar, legendary melody. The sun is shining brightly in the sky. The flowers are smiling softly at me. The little bird says, "Good morning, good morning. Why are you carrying that tiny school bag on your back?" A simple, classic childhood school song. Yet I was hammering it out with soul-crushing tragedy and raw, heartbroken passion, infusing every note with absolute thunderous intensity. The entire sprawling living room fell dead silent. The arrogant piano maestro's mouth dropped wide open, gaping wide enough to swallow a whole damn egg. Qin Zhao's eyes dilated in total, unadulterated shock, as if he had just glimpsed the threshold into a whole new world. I'm heading off to school. Never going to be late a single day. Phew, that final flourish worked out surprisingly well. As I struck the final chord, I stood up with absolute swagger, smugly raising an eyebrow right at the piano maestro. So, how was my execution? Did it pack enough raw passion for you? The maestro's face flushed a hideous mix of furious red and pale white, pointing a shaking finger at me while stuttering, "Why you? You." For ages, utterly incapable of squeezing out a coherent sentence. In the end, he violently threw his sleeves back in disgust. Pura vulgarity. Complete insult to the sacred art. He snatched up his briefcase in a huff, storming off toward the exit like a raging tempest. Before making his grand exit, he didn't forget to drop a bitter threat. Just wait until President Qin hears of this. I'll report every single detail to her truthfully. Go ahead and report. Who cares? Who's actually afraid of some pompous frauds anyway? The moment the master left, Qin Zhao stared at me with pure, unadulterated admiration. "Uncle, what you said was so amazing." "Well, obviously, my delivery is always top tier. Want to learn how to play like that? Your uncle can teach you right now." And just like that. For the remainder of the afternoon, inside the opulent, sprawling living room of Cloudtop Villa, the air reverberated continuously, with epic renditions of Two Tigers, Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star, and the iconic I Am a Little Painter. Jiang Xiaoman was in charge of wild vocals and backup dancing, while I handled the grand piano instrumental. Qin Zhao was enthusiastically clapping his tiny hands along. The sheer joy of three goofy guys can really be this simple and pure. When Qin Bing finally wrapped up her grueling corporate meetings and dragged her exhausted body back home late that evening, this was the exact scene that greeted her. A bizarre yet undeniably heartwarming picture of family bliss. She froze dead in her tracks near the foyer, staring blankly at the three of us huddled together, laughing hysterically in the living room. Two little kids and one giant man-child. She was so caught off guard that she even forgot to get angry. "Mom, you're back." Qin Zhao gasped excitedly, Uncle taught me how to play the piano today. It was super fun. Qin Bing stood there completely dumbfounded. This was legitimately the very first time she had ever seen Qin Zhao smile with such genuine, uninhibited joy. Her gaze slowly drifted past Qin Zhao, landing directly on me. That icy, condescending glare of hers was no longer purely cold. Instead, it held a subtle hint of deep curiosity, mixed with utter bewilderment. Seeing the cold iceberg beginning to thaw, I threw her a smug, triumphant grin. However, in the very next second, her phone suddenly rang. She picked up the call, and after listening for mere seconds, her expression darkened instantly as she snapped, "What did you just say?" She learned I had completely pissed off Masterly and forced him to listen to my chaotic nursery rhymes. All right, I understand. She hung up the phone and turned her gaze back toward me. The faint warmth that had briefly flickered in her eyes instantly plummeted way below freezing. Jiangji, you truly are something else. Heh, you're overpraising me. I'm just average. Only third best in the whole wide world. Qin Bing took a deep, heavy breath, desperately suppressing her raging fury. There's a parent-child sports day at the academy tomorrow. You will be bringing Jiang Xiaoman along. Wait, why am I going? I am attending as his mother. You will come along to act as his other parent. She seemed to struggle with even pronouncing the word father. The absolute most important rule is to behave yourself. Do not cause any trouble for me, or you know the dire consequences. Is this her version of giving a slap after offering a sweet date? No, this is literally just giving a massive slap, followed by an even harder, brutal backhand. Going to an elite, ultra-wealthy academy for a parent-child sports event? Isn't that basically tossing a humble farm rooster straight into a nest of peacocks? A complete public execution. I could already envision the absolute train wreck waiting for me tomorrow. The next day, the scene of my impending doom arrived. The four of us rolled up in 2 separate luxury vehicles, cruising in grand style right up to the legendary Imperial Academy kindergarten. The entrance of the kindergarten was completely packed with millions of dollars in supercar flexes, and the parents were all glammed up as if they were walking a Hollywood red carpet. The second Qin Bing stepped out, she instantly became the absolute center of attention, while I awkwardly trailed behind her, looking like a total trophy boy living off a rich wife. Jiang Xiaoman and Qin Zhao walked hand in hand, looking around with wide eyes, completely fascinated by everything. The sports day kicked off almost immediately, and the very first event was the 3-legged race. I was paired up in a group with Jiang Xiaoman, while Qin Bing teamed up with Qin Zhao. Dad, let's go. We got this. Jiang Xiaoman pumped his little fist, shouting enthusiastically, "We're guaranteed to sweep first place." I glanced down at the pair of kicks on Qin Bing's feet next to me. Ultra-rare, limited edition designer sneakers. And I took a miserable look at the cheap pair I bought on short notice, and couldn't help feeling a sudden surge of self-doubt. The moment the starting pistol fired, I instantly bellowed out our rhythmic chant. The school teachers and staff rushed over in a frantic hurry, using all their strength and hands to haul that massive, heavy dad off my squish body. "Sir, are you all right?" I sprawled flat on the grass like a half-dead dog, utterly unable to catch my breath for a solid minute. Qin Bing completely cast aside her icy, pristine image, sprinting straight over and crouching down to inspect my condition. "Jiangji, how are you holding up?" Embedded deep within her frantic voice was a genuine trace of concern that even she hadn't realized. I struggled with all my might to lift my head up, squeezing out a weak, goofy grin toward her. "I'm still breathing. Just feels like I got brutally steamrolled by a heavy military tank." Jiang Xiaoman and Qin Zhao came sprinting over in tears, both kids sobbing hysterically as they hugged me tight from left and right, crying their tiny eyes out. Gazing down at their teary faces, a wave of warmth surged through my chest. My shattered waist didn't even seem to ache quite as badly anymore. Getting flattened like a pancake was totally worth playing the hero. In the end, I was officially loaded into an ambulance as a casualty and rushed directly to the nearest emergency hospital after a full battery of intensive medical scans. Thankfully, it was only a severe soft tissue contusion on my lower back. and no actual bones were fractured. Now, I was comfortably propped up in a luxury VIP ward, soaking in the royal, meticulous care of the estate's maids. Qin Bing walked into the room after settling all the chaos at the academy. She stood quietly beside the hospital bed, staring at me with a deeply complex expression. "Thank you," she softly murmured under her breath. This was legitimately the very first time she had ever offered me such a genuine, heartfelt expression of gratitude. I let out a smug grin, trying to strike a heroic, handsome pose, only to immediately trigger the agonizing injury in my lower back. The sharp pain had me grimacing and contorting my face in pure agony. "Come on, President Qin. A simple verbal thank you isn't nearly enough compensation." I half-jokingly whimpered. "This totally counts as an on-the-job injury. Medical expenses, lost wages, plus a massive payout for emotional trauma. You've got to cover it all." Qin Bing rolled her eyes at me with exasperated annoyance. Yet the corner of her lips twitched upward in a nearly imperceptible smile. "Your compensation won't be missing a single cent." She paused for a brief moment before adding, "Today was my fault. I shouldn't have forced you to participate." Whoa, the cold queen actually learned how to apologize. It's no big deal, just experiencing the raw realities of life." I waved my hand around generously. Suddenly, the door to the VIP ward was pushed open, and Jiang Xiaoman, alongside Qin Zhao, poked their little heads into the room, clutching a massive fruit basket tightly in their hands. Clearly something Qin Bing had just instructed the staff to buy. "Dad, are you still in a lot of pain?" Jiang Xiaoman set the fruit basket down, sprinting right to my bedside to ask with deep concern, "I'm so sorry, Uncle." Qin Zhao also lowered his head in guilt, softly whispering an apology, "It's all my fault." I gently patted both of their little heads. "It's got nothing to do with you kids. Just seeing you two safe and sound makes Uncle happy." Just then, the ward door was violently kicked open, revealing a total stranger. A slick man dressed in a sharp business suit barged in, flanked by a swarm of pushy reporters directly behind him, armed to the teeth with heavy cameras and long zoom lenses. The moment the man spotted President Qin, he barked out at the top of his lungs, "I heard you secretly had an illegitimate child, and even stashed the baby daddy away right here in this hospital. Is that true?" In an instant, camera flashes began erupting like crazy. Qin Bing's face darkened dramatically. She immediately stepped forward, shielding me and the kids behind her. "Who the hell are you? Who gave you permission to barge in here?" "Security." "Take it easy, President Qin." The ringleader let out a sinister, treacherous smirk. "We're simply here to verify the facts with you. So, is this helpless man the hidden father? And are these two kids standing next to you your secret twin sons?" He pointed his camera lenses aggressively straight at me, Jiang Xiaoman, and Qin Zhao. Damn it, this was a setup. This scumbag must be one of Qin Bing's ruthless corporate rivals. I instantly realized the sinister trap at play. They were trying to weaponize this massive scandal to completely destroy Qin Bing and tank her company's stock. Qin Bing was trembling with pure, unadulterated rage. Yet to protect the children from the blinding cameras, she had no choice but to retreat step by step. The reporters aggressively pushed forward, swarming the space. "Please answer our questions, President Qin. What is your actual relationship with this gentleman? When do you plan on revealing your children's true identities to the public?" They were about to aggressively swarm right toward the hospital bed. At that critical moment, my inner badass snapped. I leaped straight out of the bed, enduring the agonizing, excruciating pain in my lower back. Grabbing the boiling hot kettle off the bedside table, I charged right toward that aggressive swarm of reporters like a madman. Then, I immediately pulled Qin Bing and the two terrified kids back, pointing straight out the window while bellowing at the top of my lungs, "Jump down." My completely insane, unhinged maneuver totally stunned every single person in the room. The reporters scrambled backwards in pure terror, screaming to dodge the hot water, instinctively retreating in utter panic. Even Qin Bing was entirely dumbfounded by my wild actions. "Jump down. Are you crazy? This is the 3rd floor. So what if it's the 3rd floor?" I frantically ripped the bed sheets off, You guys wrap these around yourselves. Hurry up. Back in my home village, I used to jump off the 5th floor all the time. Okay, complete cap. I jumped from the 2nd floor at most, and ended up spraining my ankle real bad. I violently knotted one end of the bedsheet onto the heavy radiator, and hurled the other end right out the window in record time. Finally, I shoved Qin Bing and the 2 kids toward the ledge, forcing them to slide straight down the makeshift rope. Qin Bing hesitated for a split second, but seeing even more hostile reporters gathering outside the doorway, she gritted her teeth, scooped up Qin Zhao, and was the first one to slide down. Jiang Xiaoman followed, right behind her. That little brat was fearless, sliding down even faster than a nimble monkey. Dad, hurry up, I'll catch you from down here. Watching Qin Bing successfully reach the ground, I let out a massive sigh of relief. Then, I slowly turned my head back, toward the swarm of reporters who had finally snapped back to reality, flashing them a wildly defiant, arrogant smirk. I grabbed the pillows from the hospital bed, and basically every throwable object I could lay my hands on, lashing out and violently hurling everything right at their faces. Come at me, scumbags. Let me show you city folk the true power of a country boy. After causing an absolute chaotic, glorious rampage, I grabbed onto the bedsheet and vaulted straight out the window. Unfortunately, I completely botched the landing on the ground below, and my backside slammed directly into the hard dirt. Severe back injury stacked on top of a demolished butt. A brutal, soul-crushing double critical hit. Qin Bing, hurry up and help me. Are you insane? She was in an absolute, panicky hurry. Her eyes were rimmed with red as she snapped, "Stop talking nonsense. Let's get out of here." I limped heavily, supported by Qin Bing's frantic grip, and managed to escape the hospital in utter humiliation alongside the 2 kids. By the time we finally retreated back to Cloudtop Villa, every single one of us was still reeling from lingering horror. Qin Bing immediately placed a series of emergency calls, ordering her company's public relations department to handle the massive fallout. Meanwhile, I collapsed right back onto the bed, completely immobilized and unable to budge a single inch. Jiang Xiaoman and Qin Zhao hovered anxiously right at my bedside, staring down at me with deeply worried expressions. "Dad, are you about to pass away?" "Gee, thanks for the blessing. You little brat." Qin Bing entered my bedroom after settling all the urgent corporate affairs, dismissing all the servants and maids from the room, leaving just the 2 of us alone in the quiet space. "Why did you go to such extreme lengths today?" "Huh? What do you mean why?" I played dumb, chuckling weakly. It was pure self-defense. "You know full well." "That's not what I'm asking about." Qin Bing walked over to the bedside and slowly sat down. "You easily could have ignored us and stayed out of it. Why did you risk your life to save us?" I turned my gaze toward her. Under the soft glow of the room's light, all her icy defenses were completely stripped away, exposing a face filled with raw exhaustion and deep confusion. In that moment, she was no longer that high and mighty, aloof CEO. She looked just like a vulnerable, ordinary woman. I remained silent for a brief moment. "I didn't do it just to save you." Qin Bing's eyes dimmed slightly at my response. Nor was it simply to save my own son. "Look, I met her eyes. Jiang Xiaoman is your flesh and blood, and Qin Zhao is also your son. They're blood brothers. I couldn't just stand by and watch either of them get hurt." I paused for a beat, flashing a playful, warm smirk besides. "You're the mother of my kid. There's no way in hell I'd sit back and let people bully you." Qin Bing froze in shock, staring at me for a long, long time, before slowly casting her head downward. Her delicate shoulders began to tremble slightly, and I caught sight of a single tear, dipping low and landing silently on the back of her hand resting on her knee. Holy crap, she's actually crying. I instantly panicked. "Hey, don't cry. I was just blabbering nonsense. I'm just a shameless bastard anyway. It's not like you're learning this about me today." I scrambled in a frantic panic, trying to comfort her, only to twist my waist, triggering an unbearable wave of agony that forced me to freeze. She slowly lifted her head, her expression having already regained its usual calm composure. Though her eyes were still slightly rimmed with red, she extended her soft hand, gently brushing away the stray strands of hair falling across my forehead. Her slender fingertips felt cool to the touch. Yet the second they made contact with my skin, it felt as if a powerful electric surge coursed straight through my body. My heart skipped a violent beat. The paternity test results will be delivered tomorrow. My heart instantly dropped into my stomach. The moment I dreaded the absolute most was finally arriving. If the test confirms that they really are both my biological sons, what do you plan on doing? I opened my mouth, only to realize I was completely lost for words. What should I do? Running away is definitely off the table. I already abandoned them once in the past, and giving Xiaoman away to her is something I could never do, plunging me into a deep, heavy silence, until the faint sound of Jiang Xiaoman playfully bickering with Qin Zhao echoed from outside the door. Qin Bing and I locked eyes, and in each other's soft gazes, we both spotted a faint, helpless smile. Perhaps things aren't quite as terrible as we imagined. The very next morning, I was violently shaken awake from my sleep. Dad, look! Jiang Xiaoman held up a sealed envelope, waving it eagerly right in front of my face. It was the official paternity test report. My heart plummeted straight into a dark abyss in an instant. Judgment Day had officially arrived. I took the envelope with visibly trembling hands, feeling as though this thin paper weighed 1,000 pounds. Qin Bing stood right beside the bed, her expression dead serious, while the two kids stared at me with anxious, nervous eyes. I took a deep, shaky breath, viciously tearing open the official seal. Inside were several pages packed with dense text, covered entirely in complex genetic jargon and technical data. Skipping the fluff, I flipped straight to the final page to check the conclusion. Based on comprehensive DNA sequence alignment analysis, the probability of paternity for the tested individual approaches. Between the tested individual and Jiang Xiaoman, there is no biological parent-child relationship. What? I violently jerked my head up, utterly unable to believe my own eyes. I frantically stared at the text again, printed in black and white. It explicitly stated that I shared zero blood relation with Jiang Xiaoman. How the hell is that even possible? Suddenly, a realization flashed through my mind. Back on that day, when I was filling out the forms, I had pricked my finger to collect the sample. But in my utter panic and confusion, I must have mixed up the blood samples. My eyes abruptly snapped toward Qin Bing, standing beside me. Could it be her? Qin Bing met my bewildered gaze, her face as eerily calm as a stagnant pool of water. He is not your biological son. My mind instantly went completely blank. If he isn't my son, then whose child is he? Before I even had a single second to process the chaos, Qin Bing pulled out another official document. Here is the second report. She coldly handed the document over to me, and I numbly reached out to take it. It was the official paternity test report between Qin Bing and Jiang Xiaoman, and the definitive conclusion stated. It confirms Qin Bing as Jiang Xiaoman's biological mother. Just as expected. So, what pathetic excuse do you have left to offer now? Qin Bing glared down at me, her eyes turning bone-chillingly icy once again. You lied to me for 6 whole years, selfishly hoarding my biological son for 6 entire years. Jiangji, you really are incredible. I opened my mouth in a desperate attempt to speak, yet not a single word came out. I really had deceived her. I turned my head to look at Jiang Xiaoman, who was staring back at us with an utterly clueless, bewildered expression, clearly incapable of understanding the heavy storm brewing between us. What do you mean, Mommy? Isn't my dad actually my brother's father? Qin Bing didn't offer him an answer. Instead, she stepped directly up to my bedside, slagging a pre-drafted legal contract right onto my mattress with a heavy thud. Considering all the history between us, and for the sake of you risking your life to save us yesterday, I'm giving you one absolute final chance. Here is a check for $10 million. Take the money and vanish from our lives completely, and never show your face in front of the kids ever again. $10 million, double the amount she offered me 6 years ago. It was more than enough for me to move to any city in the world and live an absolute life of luxury and comfort. I stared intently at that legal contract, then turned my eyes toward Jiang Xiaoman, who stood by the bed looking completely bewildered. 6 full years of cherished memories and little moments began flashing through my mind like a vivid movie reel. The very first time he ever uttered the word dad. The first shaky steps he ever took. The nights he fell gravely ill. When I cradled him in my arms till dawn without sleeping a wink. When he got into mischief, I was the one who went around bowing and apologizing on his behalf. And the times he secretly stuffed his saved candies into my jacket pocket. I raised him from a tiny, starving newborn baby into a scrawny little monkey who could climb trees and steal bird nests. He was literally my entire world. And now, someone actually thinks they can purchase my entire world for $10 million. I let out a bitter laugh and picked up that contract. Under Qin Bing's icy, piercing gaze, I violently ripped the paper to shreds piece by piece. The torn paper scraps fluttered down onto the bed like a flurry of snowflakes. Money sure is a great thing. But in this world, there are some priceless things that all the money in the world can never buy. Taking your money and running off with him 6 years ago was entirely my fault. And over the past 6 years, failing to give him a life of luxury was due to my own lack of capability. But from the very beginning to this exact moment, I have always loved and raised him as my very own flesh and blood. I was the one who taught him how to walk. I was the one who taught him how to speak. I taught him to be an honest person, to be brave. He is my son, and he always will be. Even if we don't share a single drop of blood, he will never just be a trophy child you can claim whenever you feel like it. If you want to tear us apart, it'll only happen over my dead body. My raw words detonated like a high-yield bomb inside the silent room. Qin Bing's face instantly turned deathly pale. She likely never expected in a million years that a lowly country bumpkin, whom she viewed as a money-hungry leech, could ever utter something so powerful and resolute. Her delicate lips trembled uncontrollably, yet she couldn't squeeze out a single coherent sentence. I don't want you to die, Dad. I don't want you to die. I don't give a damn about having a mommy. I only want my dad. Please don't abandon me, Dad. He was sobbing so hard he could barely catch his breath, pouncing forward and clinging tightly to my leg. I immediately crouched down and wrapped him in a tight, desperate embrace, my own eyes welling up with fiery red tears. Silly kid, how could Dad ever abandon you? Qin Zhao also slowly shuffled over, glancing back and forth between us and his mother, his tiny face completely torn between loyalty and heartache. After a moment of hesitation, he reached out his little hand and gently tugged on the hem of my shirt. This icy woman. I pointed my finger right at Qin Bing, so choked up with rage I could barely speak. What in the world was she trying to pull? First, she forged a fake report claiming Xiaoman wasn't related to me, using a stack of cash to try and force me out of his life. And now she's acting like the victim. Only then did Qin Bing finally choke out, I just want to test you. I want to know what truly matters in your heart. Whether money is more important, or if you actually care about the kid. 6 years ago, you threw away everything for a quick payout. I was terrified you were still the exact same sellout today. I stood there completely dumbfounded. So all that ruthless psychological warfare was just her twisted little test. Well, did you get the answer you were looking for? Igraul din pure ange. Qin Bing remained dead silent, but her tear-filled, reddened eyes said more than enough. All right, I've seen enough. Everything is crystal clear now. Elder Qin finally chimed in. What's done is done, so let bygones be bygones. The absolute highest priority right now is resolving the future of these children. He shifted his gaze toward me, before looking back at Qin Bing. Both of you are the legitimate biological parents of these kids, and neither of you has the right to strip the other of their parental rights. So, in my official opinion, you two should just get married. What? Qin Bing and I shrieked at the exact same time, get married? What kind of outrageous cosmic joke is this? Me getting hitched to Qin Bing? This old man's wild imagination makes mine look tame. Dad, what kind of ridiculous nonsense are you spouting? Qin Bing snapped. There is zero chance I'm ever spending my life with him. Hey, count me out too. I instantly voiced my agreement. I'm used to my wild country freedom. I'm not spending the rest of my life locked up with a literal iceberg. Who are you calling an iceberg? Whoever takes offense. Just like that, the two of us were back at each other's throats like toxic hazards. Both of you shut the hell up. You think I actually want to play matchmaker for you two? If it weren't for the sake of my two precious grandchildren. If it weren't for my two precious little grandchildren, I wouldn't give a damn about either of you. He pointed right at Jiang Xiaoman and Qin Zhao, asked them, do you kids want a real, complete home? Do you want both of your parents to be together? The two little kids traded quick glances with each other before vigorously nodding their heads in complete unison. Jiang Xiaoman even blurted out directly, I want my dad. Oh, I want dad and mom to stay together. Qin Zhao also soft-spokenly chimed in, I want that too. Great, I just got totally sold out by these two little backstabbers. Both Qin Bing and I were rendered completely speechless. So it's settled then. The old master gave us zero room to object or argue. In order to give these children a proper, legitimate family identity, and to permanently shut down those media vultures outside, you two must get married. Of course, it'll strictly be a marriage of convenience. You two can continue sleeping in separate bedrooms, completely staying out of each other's personal business. Once the kids reach adulthood, if you want to divorce and leave, I won't do a single thing to stop you. Qin Bing and I turned to lock eyes once again, both catching a subtle hint of hesitation flickering in each other's gaze. Honestly, this seemed to be the only option on the table, as well as the absolute best solution for everyone involved. I'll give you 24 hours to think it over. With those final words, the old master turned and strutted out majestically alongside the butler, leaving just the four of us behind in the bedroom, trapped in an atmosphere so utterly cringe and awkward that you could literally cringe hard enough to dig out a mansion with your toes. Finally, I decided to be the one to shatter the agonizing silence. President Iceberg, Qin Bing. I cleared my throat awkwardly. What are your thoughts on this? Qin Bing threw me a vicious glare, clearly still salty over that iceberg nickname. For the sake of the kids, I can accept it, she replied in her signature icy tone. All right then, I nodded in agreement. I'm fine with it too. And just like that, my fake marriage to Qin Bing was completely set in stone. 3 days later, we officially received our marriage certificates from the Civil Affairs Bureau. Staring down at the fiery red marriage certificate resting in my hand, I felt as though I was living in a total fever dream. 6 years ago, I sold my dignity for quick cash. And 6 years later, I went ahead and sold my soul for my son. Man, life truly is an absolute wild, dramatic joke. To celebrate the official grand founding of our brand new family, I decided to step into the kitchen and flex my master chef skills. I politely turned down the professional chef's offer, single-handedly taking full command of the villa's massive kitchen. Dad, what kind of delicious food are you whipping up? Jiang Xiaoman asked, drooling uncontrollably at the sight. I'm making my absolute ultimate signature dish, authentic country-style pot-stewed chicken. I pulled out the plump, prime rooster I had been raising back in the countryside for 6 whole months, bringing it straight out to begin prepping the feast. Meanwhile, Qin Zhao and his mother, Qin Bing, clearly had never witnessed such a raw, rustic cooking show in their entire lives, cautiously keeping their distance. Half an hour later, a mouth-watering, savory aroma wafted straight out of the kitchen. I carried out a giant, piping hot pot of rich stewed chicken, ringed with a border of golden, crispy flatbreads stuck to the edges, plunking the whole mouth-watering feast right onto the dining table. Dig in, kids. Come taste your dad's legendary cooking. Jiang Xiaoman was the absolute first to pounce, grabbing a flatbread, dipping it deep into the rich gravy, and taking a massive, messy bite. This is so ridiculously delicious. I scooped a juicy, tender chicken leg straight into Qin Zhao's bowl. Zhao, give this a try too. Qin Zhao took a cautious, tiny bite, and his eyes instantly lit up with sheer delight. It's amazing. I threw Qin Bing a smug, proud smirk. Care to honor us with your presence and give it a shot, President Qin? Qin Bing hesitated for a brief moment, before picking up a small, tender piece of chicken with her chopsticks, and placing it gracefully into her mouth. She froze dead in her tracks. Well, What do you think? She didn't utter a single word, instead immediately picking up another piece, then another piece, and another, until finally, she had single-handedly scarfed down half the entire pot of chicken. Talk about her body being way more honest than her mouth. After our hearty dinner, our newly minted family of four shared a surprisingly cozy, yet slightly awkward vibe. As we sat together in the living room watching TV, Jiang Xiaoman and Qin Zhao squished themselves right up against my sides, gabbing away nonstop. Qin Bing sat gracefully on a single sofa just a short distance away from us, holding a high-end financial magazine, though her eyes kept stealthily drifting over to us every couple of seconds. A hilarious comedy movie was broadcasting on the giant television, having the three of us cracking up and laughing our heads off as our hysterical laughter echoed through the room. The corners of Qin Bing's cold lips subconsciously curled upward into a soft smile. In that exact tender moment, as the soft moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating her face, it suddenly struck me. This terrifying iceberg didn't actually seem all that cold anymore. Our life, after entering this marriage of convenience, was shockingly full of wild plot twists and unexpected perks. I, Jiang Ji, transformed overnight from a humble rural chicken farmer into the high and mighty live-in husband to the legendary CEO of the powerful Qin Corporation. Though, of course, my absolute main duty as her husband was basically full-time house husband and dad duty. Qin Bing remained the exact same hardcore workaholic, grinding from dawn till dusk every single day. Yet I noticed her coming home earlier and earlier. She used to be the absolute last person to leave the office, but now she was actively turning down pointless social events, making sure to rush back home right before dinner, because deep down, she knew there were three eager faces waiting around the dining table just for her. I fully unlocked my secondary class as the ultimate homemaker, utilizing my god-tier culinary skills to completely conquer the stomachs of everyone in the household, especially Qin Bing's. Though she constantly complained that my cooking was way too greasy and unhealthy, she always ended up eating more than anyone else at the table. Meanwhile, the bond between our two boys grew stronger by the day. Jiang Xiaoman basically stepped up as Qin Zhao's personal bodyguard, if anyone even dared to breathe funny near Qin Zhao at kindergarten. Xiaoman would throw hands first and ask questions later. On the flip side, Qin Zhao became Xiaoman's dedicated private tutor, strictly supervising his homework every single evening and reading him cozy bedtime stories. One energetic as a hyperactive rabbit, the other as sweet and quiet as an angel, creating a strangely wholesome harmony. Today was the grand anniversary gala of the Qin Group, and as the CEO's official spouse, I was forcibly dragged along by Qin Bing, dressed in a borrowed, hyper-expensive designer suit. Standing amidst a sea of elite, high-society snobs, I felt completely out of my element, feeling like a goofy husky who somehow snuck into a flock of elegant swans. Qin Bing, on the other hand, looked like an absolute empress, dazzling the entire room in a breathtaking silver evening gown that shone like pure starlight. She wrapped her arm snugly around mine, effortlessly gliding through the crowd of corporate titans. Allow me to introduce my husband, Jiang Ji. Every single time, she proudly introduced me to someone. Her subtle flex left the elite crowd completely stunned. I could visibly feel it. Those powerful corporate bosses were showering me with a mixed barrage of intense envy, doped with thick jealousy and underlying contempt. Hey, keep staring all you want. Even if you desperately wanted to be a pampered house husband, you'd never get the chance. Right in the middle of the lavish banquet, a greasy-looking man with slicked-back hair and a powdered face sauntered over holding a glass of wine. He was the exact scumbag who previously sent reporters to harass us at the hospital, the CEO of our rival company who actively tried to ruin us. Long time no see, President Qin. You're looking more breathtaking than ever. This CEO Wang smirked with pure malice. And this must be the legendary Mr. Jiang, correct? I've heard so much about you. What an absolute talent you are. Any idiot with half a brain could hear the vicious sarcasm oozing from his mouth. Qin Bing's expression instantly turned deadly cold, just about to tear into him. When I gently grabbed her hand to stop her, I flashed CEO Wang a brilliant, dazzling smile. Ah, you must be CEO Wang, right? I've also been hearing wonders about your reputation for a while. Word on the street is that your company's cash flow is suffering a massive crisis lately. Well, that's just business for you. You win some, you lose some. Unlike me, who was blessed with God-tier luck from birth, landing myself such an incredible, wealthy wife. Now, I don't have to worry about money for the rest of my life. I intentionally wrapped my arm tightly around Qin Bing's waist, leaning in intimacy to whisper near her ear. Right, honey? Wouldn't you agree? Qin Bing's entire body stiffened in shock. Yet she smoothly played along with my flex and gave a subtle nod. CEO Wang's face turned completely green in an instant. By shamelessly flexing like this, I wasn't just exposing his company's desperate financial ruin. I was also flexing my romance right in his smug face. Zero physical damage, but maximum emotional disrespect. He was so infuriated that he could barely stammer out a word. Why you? I casually raised my glass of champagne, swirling it gently just like he did. Instead of wasting time acting salty and throwing shade here, why don't you head back and figure out how to actually pay your employees? Overdue salaries? Otherwise, when your company goes belly up, you might end up crawling to my wife begging for a job. With that final sting, I turned and pulled Qin Bing away, leaving CEO Wang raging and cursing blindly behind us. Once we slipped away into a quiet, deserted corner, Qin Bing suddenly shook off my hand, gazing at me with deeply conflicted eyes. Just what is wrong with you? I proudly raised my eyebrows. I was just helping you vent your frustration, okay? Qin Bing fell silent for a long moment, before suddenly asking, who exactly are you to me? I chuckled softly. I'm just a simple farmer, the father of your child, and your legal, registered husband. And what about after that? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I looked back at the dazzling, brilliant lights of the grand ballroom, and then at those two little figures sneakily stealing slices of cake in the distance. At least for right now, life feels pretty amazing. Qin Bing followed my gaze, a soft smile breaking across her face. A smile like winter ice melting away, giving way to the full bloom of spring. Perhaps this is just what life is, packed with unexpected twists, turns, and wonderful surprises. Who could have ever guessed that an absurd, ridiculous deal 6 years ago would lead to such a chaotic, noisy present, yet result in an incomparably warm and loving home? I looked at the beautiful woman standing right beside me, and at my 2 sons giggling not far away, feeling a sense of total peace I'd never known before. Oh, whatever. I guess I'll just be a trophy husband for the rest of my life. Thank you all so much for sticking with us on this crazy journey.